Hello, you guys. So, do you remember Ronald Reed? He was a gas attendant. He was also a janitor. He amassed a fortune of like $8 million and nobody around him knew it. And I believe this was in like 2014. So, I did a little research on him. Not much. I just read a couple of articles. That was really all I could find. Anyway, so all we know is the people around him didn't really know that he was, had all these investments. So, but he did drive an older Toyota. He wound up giving willing his money to his local library and his local hospital. So we don't know much about him, but we do know that he was a faithful investor. He was frugal because he had a used Toyota. So that was a good thing. And he must have invested for a very long period of time and often, right? That's what we always hear about investments is do it early and do it often. And so the interesting part about it is that he wasn't showy. Nobody knew anything and knew that he had all this money. Anyway, I just found it very interesting because he never made a whole lot of money. So is it safe to say that you could become wealthy or at least have a really good life on less than, a very, whatever we want to consider, a very rich person's salary, right? Anyway, if you are new here and you came over from Money Mom's channel, welcome. And I appreciate you coming over here. So today I'm doing a collab with Sensible Living with Money Mom, Dawn over there. And we're talking about money and does it really matter how much you make? Can you still live a good life? Can you still become wealthy without, having a huge income? So whether you make $50,000 a year or $150,000 a year, right? So with that story I just talked about with the Ronald Reed, the opposite is true of people who win the lottery, right? We know that they blow through their money and then a lot of times they wind up in debt and then they wind up claiming bankruptcy, which is crazy if you think about that, because a lot of people, are, playing the lottery, hoping to win that jackpot. We also know that the majority of the people who play the lottery are literally living in poverty. That's what the statistics say, is that the majority of the people who play the lottery are in, below the poverty line or just above the poverty line. And that is terrible. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today. So there's a handful of money truths that I want to talk about. One of them is money just makes you more of who you are, right? And we can see this, like say when there's a funeral, when somebody passes away. And if you have never been in this situation where you've had to help with an estate or deal with any people who are inheriting anything or whatever, that's amazing. That's awesome. Very fortunate for you. But those of us that have, it is really interesting to see certain ones of maybe your family, your friend's family, whoever, where you're thinking, where did they come from? So you've lived your whole life thinking that, this person was, say, very loving, giving, generous, whatever. And then when somebody dies, they turn into a monster. And you're like, whoa, that came out of left field. But it actually didn't. They've always been that way. We just didn't notice. And I think a lot of times it's because we didn't want to notice, right? Because you don't like to think your family's that, or, whoever it happens to be. You don't like to think that, so we don't. But a tip to remember is when people show you who they are, believe them. It's the truth. And also in that money makes you more of who you are line, if you're a very generous person, if you wind up with quite a bit of money, you will be an even more generous person. Or if you are, say, like a Scrooge, you hold on to every penny and you take frugal to an absolute extreme where you won't spend anything. You know, you're like a, what do they call that? Spendthrift? Or like a Scrooge McDuck, right? Getting money isn't going to make that any better. It's going to make it worse. So there's that. And then another thing is there's so many things that money can't fix. It can't fix everything, right? So things like relationships, your mental health. It can certainly get you therapy. That's true. It can certainly get you therapy. And it can also bring you peace of mind having some money in the bank. This is true. But a lot of things it can't fix. For example, it can't fix your habits, right? You can work on new habits. You can really try and, on all these different departments, whether it's spending, saving, giving, whatever, you can really try. But money isn't really, money isn't going to really help you with those things because those are heart things, right? Those are things that come from you, and it doesn't matter how much money you have. You either, do have these habits in place or you don't, right? So the next thing is the more money you make, the more money you spend. And I know if, let's take the 50, 150 scenario. If you make $50,000, you may be a year, you may be thinking, I couldn't even imagine what it's like to make $150,000 a year. But generally that doesn't happen overnight, right? It's in increments. And so you are $50,000 and then maybe next year you're $65,000 and you feel a little more breathing room. And then you maybe the couple years down the road, maybe you're 85, you keep moving up. Well, if you haven't put, the 5 pillars of money in place whenever you had very little money, the chances of you putting those in place when you have a lot of money are slim to none. And the 5 pillars I mean are like avoiding debt, budgeting, having a plan, living on less than you make, saving, investing, those 5 pillars. If those aren't in place when you have a little bit of money, chances are it's not going to be in place when you have a lot of money. So are you still going to feel fairly broke? So this is interesting. So this was according to, I think it was Bloomberg Business. So very interesting stat here. 25% of people making $175,000 or more a year report feeling poor, very poor, or barely getting by, but things are tight. And you might be thinking, what in the world, right? But at the same time, the more you make, the more you spend. And it's just that way. It's just human nature, right? And this was also interesting. So of those people who made $175,000 or more a year, several of them that made $500,000 a year to $1 million a year reported feeling the same thing. Now these aren't people who have that as their net worth. That's how much they make in a year. So they're bringing in a lot of money every single month, right? And they're even feeling that way. Why? Because they don't have the 5 pillars. Because they're not paying attention to the 5 pillars. That's exactly why. And it's really interesting. So I'm looking down here because this is where my notes are. So Google says that poor is insufficient money to live in a standard considered normal by society. But you guys, normal in society right now is broke, because 75 or 70% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. That's broke. I don't want to be normal. So even if I were to have a very low income, I could still not feel like I have a low income if I'm following, the things with money that I, know to do, right? And so, hold on, let me tell you what it says about rich. So it says rich means having more than enough to gratify normal needs or desires. So that means that if you have enough money for your needs and a couple of wants, that makes you rich, according to Google. I just find this very fascinating. My uncle used to say that if you don't give when you're poor, you won't give when you're rich, because it comes from your heart, not your pocketbook, right? So I'm just thinking, all of these habits that we have, and all of the way we think about money, right? How we were raised, how we give, whether we have, whether we live our life with our hand open or, in a fist where it's more closed. All of those things are our own personal things that honestly don't have anything to do with money itself, which I find so interesting. And my husband and I fell into the trap of lifestyle creep, right? We wound up making way more money than we had been used to. And it just kept, like I said earlier, it just kept creeping up and up and up. And so we were just spending more and more and more. And it wasn't until I had to quit my job that we completely, so our income went in half, got cut in half, that we completely changed so many of our habits. I want to know, has that happened to you? And also, have you noticed that like money, what they call money stuff, seems to have less to do with money and more about, behavior, how we're feeling inside. It's very emotional, right? Anyway, I was just curious. Have you noticed all these things? And if so, and if you have fallen prey to lifestyle creep and not been following the 5 pillars, I want to know that too, because I certainly have fallen into that. So give this video a thumbs up. And also, if you are still here from Money Mom's channel, welcome. And I would love to have you as part of the community. And I will see you in the next video. All right, bye.